Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll kick it off tonight. Welcome, and I'm so happy to see so many people here with us tonight. I can see that we've got around 212 people logged in at the moment, and it's still picking up slowly. So it's really great to see such a huge number of people logging in and to be interested in fungi, because really, let's be honest, we really don't talk about fungi enough, I think, and they are super cool. My name is Lucia Chmurova, and I am the Conservation Officer for the Magnificent Meadows Wales project, working with Plant Life, and I'm going to be chairing the session tonight. We will be normally doing in this month the kind of advanced session, 3-day courses in person for very limited amount of people. So because we are kind of forced to do this online, I think it's such a good thing because we could really open it to everyone and invite so many more people to hear about fungi. Just a tiny bit of introduction about Plant Life and our project. Plant Life is a conservation charity that is dedicated to conservation of wildflowers, other plants like ferns, mosses and lichens, but also fungi. They're working throughout the country, and if you want to know more about their campaigns, projects and activities, do please visit their website. The project is called Magnificent Meadows Wales and is a 3-year project funded by the Welsh Government. We started last year. The main partners are National Trust and Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, and we are really working towards extending and increasing the extent of our beautiful grasslands and meadows across the whole Wales. We are working on large scale with National Trust all across the country, but also on a smaller scale, so more urban sites where we are working with community groups, schools and hospitals, and really bringing in more of our meadows because they are really great for wildlife, but also for our well-being. You might be wondering why Project About Meadows is doing a session on fungi. Well, as you'll hear from all our speakers as well tonight, there is a huge range of beautiful fungi in our meadows as well. And there is quite a beautiful transition, I think, between the summer where we've got all the flowers in the bloom. Once that's finished, then the fungi take over. And they're just as interesting and colorful. And now is really the perfect time for them. They're popping up everywhere. So let's move on to our topic of tonight, Color in the Countryside, an introduction to grassland fungi. We've got 3 amazing speakers with us tonight. The first one is Hywel Evans. He's going to talk to us for about 30 minutes, and he will tell us all we need to know about grassland fungi as beginners. Hywel just started his PhD in mycology, which is the study of fungi at Swansea University, and he's been working with fungi for over 10 years, running different courses and lectures about fungi ecology to different audiences. Next, we've got Bruce Langridge with us, who is the head of interpretation from the National Botanic Garden of Wales. And he'll share his experience of the kind of practical management of sites that belong to the gardens. And lastly, we've got Joe Bullard from Plant Life with us. He's our mapping and IT pro, and he's the man behind the development of our very new and exciting citizen science mobile app, all about fungi, of course. Just few technical bits before we start. You have all been automatically muted, and also your camera is turned off, but don't worry, you will see all the speakers. And you can also have a play around in your own settings. I think it should be in the right up corner of your screen where you have the view options, so you can just choose which one is best for you. You will be able to ask us questions throughout the whole session, even during the talks. So if you can please pop those down into the Q&A box. You can see it again, there is a panel at the bottom of your screen, and there is a Q&A and a chat option. So if you can please direct the questions into the Q&A box, but we will be also using the chat throughout the session, where we'll be sharing some important links with you and maybe some answers from the questions. So I also would like to say that behind the scenes with us, we've got Tamsin and Phoebe working. They are both from my project. Phoebe is the project manager and Tamsin is the outreach officer for the project. and they'll be busily replying to all of your questions throughout the session. If you can also keep the conversation going, and whether that's live or after the session, we've got a couple of hashtags that you can be using, which is Medals Cymru and WaxcApp Watch, so you can keep that going. I think that's all from me. We've got a really interesting selection and exciting selection of talks ahead of us, so let's start with it. Over to you, Hywel.
Hi everyone, it's great to see that got so many people come along today. It looks like fungi are starting to gain the appreciation they deserve. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about grassland fungi, more specifically into waxcap fungi, and how they kind of fit into our knowledge of ecology and the wider environment. So to start with then, I'm going to give us a little bit of background about fungi in general. So there's three main domains of life. There's archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So eukarya are the eukaryotes, and we've got plants and animals belong to this group. There's new research come out now that seems to think the eukaryas come from archaea. So there's two, but for the purposes of this, it's safe to say there's three. So within these domains then, and the different fungi we get several different types. So the saprotrophs then, those are the fungi that are responsible for degrading dead organic matter, basically when plants die and become woody debris or litter or grass roots, for instance. These are the main groups that are going to break them down. The mycorrhizal fungi got a lot of attention recently. These are fungi that will partner with plant roots. They gain sugars from the plant, and in return they scavenge nutrients and things the plant wouldn't be able to achieve, or more hard for them to achieve, without this partnership. We have parasites then. The parasitic fungi, they will actively kill plants, and then they may eat the dying plant afterwards, but nonetheless they're an important part of ecology, and we don't really talk about them in a positive light very much. They're key integral parts of the species community. We have endophytes then. So endophytic fungi are fungi that live within the cells of fungi. Even columns, trees will have a complex community of fungi, and it's no different in other plants as well. The endophytes we're talking about today don't harm the plants, but there's various different endophytes which might kill certain parts or just live off the plant without the plant getting an advantage per se. And then we have fungi like yeasts, which are present in soil. We're all familiar with bread and wine making yeast. So these groups in research called as stress tolerers. They can be single-celled budding forms, or they can form these long chains that we call hyphae, which are essentially fungi roots. And then lichens. I'm sure everyone's familiar with lichens. They're a combination of fungi, algae, and cyanobacteria. So this is it seems like a lot. This is probably a simplified view of the fungi. The group is enormous. So going on from that then, so how many species of fungi are? So the estimate says we've got globally 2.2 to 3.8 million species, but there are estimates of up to 165 million species. So there really is a lot of them. In the UK then, we think there's about 18,000 species. Not all fungi produce fruiting bodies that we see, the mushrooms that we see in grasslands, for instance. Of those 18,000, it's between 4.5 to 5.5, so roughly about 5,000 of those species are what we call agarochoid fungi. So they're fungi that form mushrooms, basically, that we can identify them by. And to put them in comparison then with plants, we roughly have about 3,000 plant species in the UK, of which native is probably around 1,400, if I'm correct. Someone from Plant Life might like to correct me there. But that helps put things in perspective. Of course, fungi aren't plants at all. They're more closely related to us. But traditionally, they were thought of as plants. So So how do they spread then? Okay, so the group called the basidiomycetes, which is what we look at in most grassland fungi, okay? They're usually the ones that have a cap to them and look like a mushroom. So we think that predominantly spread by spores, but there's also insect and invertebrate interactions we've got to think about. The spores sit on these structures called sterigma. So if you follow the mouse, so there's these sticks coming off this ball here, best way to describe it. The spores will sit on the end of this stick, and the whole structure is called basidia. There's a mechanism called Buller's drop, so that flicks these spores off these in the millions into the air column, and helps them travel to new habitats and new resources. So here we can see there's another basidia here with the sterigma. These are basidia of waxcap fungi. So an interesting fact then, so this was the paper that was published in 1998 by Nicholas Money. It was during discharge, the ballista spores are basically the spores in this group called the basidiomycetes. So they're subjected to an acceleration of 25,000 Gs. That's about 10,000 times acceleration experienced by astronauts during the launch of the space shuttle. Amazingly, this is called a passive spore release, but yeah, the forces are incredible. And then you've got other estimates that are around 10,000 G, which is still pretty impressive. So broad threats to grassland fungi then. Perhaps the biggest threat really is a lack of field recorders and amateur naturalists. It's really great to see so many people getting involved with fungi now, and popularity is building a lot. But we need people to develop the skills with the help of others and help us record what's there and update records. So aside from that then, we think that modern agricultural practices post-1940s is when things start to go a bit downhill for a lot of grasslands and fungi. And in Western Europe in the past 75 years, there's been a loss of more than 90% of unimproved grasslands. This is mostly due to agricultural intensification, we think. So when we think about net primary production and health of the planet, decomposition is just as important to consider as net primary production. Okay, so healthy soils are so important for terrestrial ecosystems. The fungi play an absolutely integral role in soil and healthy soil ecosystems. Okay, but unfortunately, the role of fungi in ecosystems is largely ignored, even at some university levels. They're not really taught about, which is a shame. Like we said, this is changing, which is great. Part of the reason they are unpredictable, and we've had technological constraints up until now, really, which it's very hard to record the fungi when they're not showing fruiting bodies, and even some fungi don't show fruiting bodies. So new molecular techniques that we've got have allowed us to look at some of this stuff in finer detail, and some of the stuff that's coming out now is really exciting. So fungi in grasslands in general. So generally speaking then, species richness of macrofungi is greater in woodlands. In Western Europe, there's around 400 species which are kind of specific or mostly found in grasslands. So the larger fungi that you find, the really bigger ones, Agaricus. Agaricus is the genus that we get our button mushrooms from, Agaricus by spores. Macrolepiota procera is a parasol fungus, so you might that's quite a popular one. And Calocybes genus of St. George's mushroom. So these are the much larger fungi. And then the smaller fungi, we've got things like Hygrocebae, which is one of the genuses for waxcap fungi, Marasmius, fair-ring champignon, and Entelomas, which are just fantastic group of fungi if you haven't seen them before. So on the left here, we've got a pestle puffball, it's called. They can get quite big. We've talked about the fungi on the right, which is Macrolepiota procera, it's the parasol fungus. These are the ones that attract us most attention, and they're great in their own right, but there's some fantastic microfungi as well that we see in grasslands. So sharing the same habitat, there's stuff called chegg fungi. They are a group of fairy clubs, waxcaps, pig gills, earth tongues, and the crack caps, along with a few others. This has been expanded a bit to include a few other fungi as of late, but Fungi is never short of fantastic common names. It's just putting names to them is the challenge now as we discover more species. So waxcaps then, more specifically, the ones that have really got a lot of attention as of late, they are, what do they look like? Well, they're colourful usually. Sometimes you get kind of pure white ones, as in snowy waxcap. We get brown colours, greys. They can be small or large. You can get some quite, they grow to some size, some of them. And the texture is different in waxcaps. They're either waxy, but they can also be slimy or dry and fibrous. So the biology surrounding caps, it's relatively unknown. We think that they have this relationship with plants, but it's quite complicated. We haven't really teased out a definite relationship. There's this possible biotrophic, which biotrophic in this sense means they're feeding on the plant, but not necessarily in a negative way, or possible mycorrhizal. And there's a possibility that they are kind of early decomposers of grass roots, okay, and that they're present probably as endophytes and host tissues. So really interesting biology to them. Their distribution then, you can be found worldwide, okay, so, and they can be found in a lot of different habitats. Grasslands in the UK, especially Wales, which is a really great place to find waxcaps. They're predominantly in grasslands, but you do find them in woodlands sometimes. Other places in the world, they're more often found in forests and things, but you can get them in marshes, fens, bogs, even regenerating sites like coal spoil and green roofs on houses. So they do span, you know, quite a lot of different habitats. So we've talked a little bit about that. I'm going to briefly go through what you need to be looking at when you want to actually ID fungi. These are kind of things you should try and ingrain into your brain, so that you automatically think of these things and before you start IDing stuff, and this will help you out a lot when you approach different people and ask for help. So, identifying features of fungi then. Well, the color is important, but it's important to note that this will fade with if there's frost, or if the fruit bodies start to break down, for instance. So that's something to bear in mind. The gill attachment, okay, so the gills are where the spore we talked about earlier, the basidia, they sit on. Those gills and how they attach to the stem is an important feature to look at. The texture of the cap and the stem, really, really important feature. But you've got to remember that these are out in the natural world, and sometimes features degrade, and you've got to use it. You've got to think a little bit about, you know, has this broken down, or is this a true feature, or so forth. And the smell is really important as well, especially in wax caps. So there's wax caps that smell of garlic, for instance. There are wax caps that smell of Russian leather, apparently. I've not smelled what Russian leather is, but the people who wrote the guides obviously do. Cedar wax cap and things. So these are all things that are important to note before you start to ID them. So some brief mycology terminology then. So a lot of the terms, they look quite long-winded, but they're not really complicated. They're just fancy words for quite simple things. So squamulose is like a flaky surface on it. Pruniose is a hairy, and fibrillose just means fibrous. So gill attachments then. So if the gills are free, they're kind of they're not attached to the stem as per se. There's always crossover between different types. So don't think it's a two-sentence zone. And next means that they are narrowly attached to the stem. And nate then would be broadly attached to the stem. So like I said, these are things you need to try and ingrain into yourself so that you can better ID stuff. It really does speed up your learning once you've learned these. Decurrent then, if the gills are decurrent, they're going down the stem. You see quite a lot of wax caps with decurrent gills. And a marginate is this, usually has this little tooth. It's hard to explain there, but it goes back on itself, and there's a fine tooth that's attached to the stem. Okay, so the cap shapes then, convex is like broadly hemispherical or sort of thing, or semi-spherical. Conical is like a witch's hat, more or less. Campanulate is bell-shaped. Umbonate, an umbo is a central bump in the middle of the stem. So you do get quite a lot of, well, umbonate fungi. There are quite a lot of them. It's quite a definitive characteristic. So one worth noting. Umbilicate is like funnel-shaped. There are a lot of funnel-shaped fungi, but remember these might sound a bit complicated now, but when you start to use them, it'll stick and it'll really, really help you. Okay, so things to be mindful of then. Caps open out. So the fungi starts like it is on the left here. As it gets older, a lot of them will start to change shape. So this throws people off sometimes, and you might not be able to guess what my drawing is. It's not the best, but basically these are the gills going down here. As the cap turns up, it turns in on itself. Yeah, this fools even experienced mycologists and can throw your ID off a little bit. It's important to know that even really good field mycologists get stuff wrong, and while it can be challenging to ID fungi, it's okay to get things wrong from time to time. So here, that's a real life example. So these are where the caps have upturned. These are waxcap fungi. And as they dry out, they look horrible. When they start out fresh, they're much, much better. So the bane of waxcappers. So in graveyards, you might see a lot of this. This has been the bane of my waxcap surveying. But yeah, they're actually these plastic flowers that you get in graveyards. They remarkably look like waxcap sometimes. So this is a Hygrossebe intermedia. Yeah, from a distance, they can make a site that's really poor look very, very rich. So an essential piece of kit, probably the best bit of kit was my friend Emma Williams introduced me to, is this thing here. Hand lens is really important. These ones you can get really cheap and they've got a light on them. They are really useful to look at some of the small identifying features. Sometimes you have like gelatinous edges to gills and things in the guides. So yeah, they're really useful pieces of kit. If you're doing proper, I wouldn't pick too many on a site, but sometimes you have to pick a small amount of fruiting bodies just to ID them properly, and especially if you're doing microscope work. So a small number is okay, within reason. Trust people use their judgment on that. This is more for larger fungi, really. You don't really need something this size when you're doing wax caps, something small like that. And you don't need this many fruiting bodies. This was a particular site when I was teaching some people how to do some microscope stuff. So I picked a few, but there was a lot on this site. Okay, so where can you learn about fungi then, right? So the best sources of learning, and they've provided me with an awful amount of knowledge over the years, and the people who listen to this will know who they are. But Carmarthenshire Fungi Group, which is based in the Botanical Gardens, is a good group to join. Glamorgan Fungus Group is another one, and the Pembrokeshire Fungus Recording Network. So the people in these groups have a really, really extensive knowledge of field ID and recording, and they are very willing to help you. They've got Facebook groups as well. So if you add yourself to the group, then and you've got a query about a fungus identification, people will be more than willing to help you on that. They are a really great way to learn, and there's some really good open discussions on there, and you find other people have seen the same area, and just a really nice network of naturalists. So I'm going to go through some quick species ID with you. Let's see how much time we've got left. Just so you're familiar with some of the more easily identifiable wax caps. So some wax caps you need microscopes to ID. It sounds really daunting, but they're not as scary as you think, microscopes. And then some can be more easily ID'd in the field, okay? So this is a really great one to start with. This is Hygrossebe intermedia. I'm not aware of a common name. Don't worry too much if it doesn't sink in for now. If you're kind of just starting out remembering Latin names, it can be a bit daunting. But this one is usually at the start of the year you get this. It has this, it's very bright orange yellow. They can be quite large, you can see on the right. The cap is dry and fibrillose, so it's fibrous and dry, and the stem is coarsely fibrillose, more or less the same thing, but dry is a really important thing. And the gills are adnexed, okay? this is sometimes when you see these terms, you can struggle to try and remember them, but the best thing advice I can give people is actually get out and look for them. It's the quickest way to learn these things. And be ambitious in your goals in trying to run as many fungi as you can. So this is a really popular one then. Okay, Hygroscopy conica is blackening waxcap, or I think witch's hat is another common name for it. So there's different colour forms, but usually it's orange cap and yellow stem, and it blackens when you handle it. So these are different stages of wax caps. Okay, so this is one in its prime here. As it starts to age, it goes black, but when you handle it, a fresh one, it will start to blacken as you touch it. Really common. It's one of the first colonizing species, really. You tend to get it all the way from July time all the way up until now. Hygroscopy intermedia, the wax cap we talked about previously, it's usually early on in the year. So conica then, appreciate this is probably quite a bit text heavy, but bear with me. So the cap of Hygroscopy conica is smooth, can be moist or viscid. Viscid means not greasy, but a bit like slimy in a way, and then it can become dry. So these are things that are important to note, that features can change slightly as it gets older. The gills are free or are next, and the stem is fibrillose, viscid or moist at first, and then becoming more or less dry with age. Whole fruit and body turns black like blotting ink when handled. So some fungi as they age will look like they go black, but you will notice a difference with this one. It is like blotting ink. If you handle it, it will go black pretty quickly. This is a really popular one. Hygroscopy cynefin. You could perhaps confuse this with the first one, the orange one, Hygroscopy intermedia, but it's not as coarsely fibrillose, like as coarsely fibrous. It's usually this all yellow form. I think the common name of this is citrine waxcap. It's a really nice one to find. It's got this like coarsely felty cap to it. So I'm hoping now I'm getting into, the message is coming across that you need to look at some of these finer features, but just stick with them and you'll do well in the long term. Okay, so the cap of this one is dry, radially fibrillose. Radially just means kind of lengthwise, and it's going down like this. The stem is dry and fibrillose, and the gills are free or adnext. Okay. Again, like I said, don't worry too much if this seems a lot for now. Once you get started and start to ID things, you'll find that this comes a lot more easily to you. Porpulomopsis calyptriformis, a really long Latin name for a very simple common name. This is pink waxcap or ballerina waxcap. This is probably one of the easiest ones to ID. You'll find this in grasslands, graveyards, things like that. It's really, really fantastic waxcap. There's some great displays at the moment. The cap is kind of greasy to dry, and the stem is smooth or finely fibrillose, and the gills are free or adnext. This one has been tried to grow on grass, so it's just the stem's got really long. So remember, they are growing things, so they don't always read the books, these things, and sometimes they might look a little bit differently to the guides. Cupophilus flavipes. This is yellow foot waxcap. Okay, it's not one I see very often, really, but one of the key defining features is this yellowing in the stem. At the bottom of it, it might be a bit difficult to see on the pictures. Quite a large waxcap, but yeah, a really nice species. It's got decurrent gills. I'm hoping that this is sinking in now a little bit, but yeah, you can see they come down like this. The cap is smooth and greasy. Is fibrillose fibrous, and the gills are decurrent. Okay, this is a really common one that you'll likely see when you go out looking for grassland fungi. This is the Cupophilus pratensis. It's the meadow waxcap. Meadow waxcaps can get quite big. This is a small one, but this is quite a common species you get here, especially, well, at least in my area anyway. It's got this like apricot orange cap and white stem. So the cap is the dry, finely fibrillose. The stem is dry and fibrillose, and the gills are decurrent. You do find this in woodlands sometimes, but there are lookalikes which are mycorrhizal, so they have this partnership with trees that look similar, so it can throw you off a bit. Okay, this is not a very common one at all. Something I found this year. This is a horrible picture. I appreciate that. And you might not be able to think which is the cap and the stem. But this is the cap here, and this is the stem. The reason I put it in is it's easily identifiable because it's one of the only fungi that when you touch it, it goes red. It's called Hywel Evans. I'm not aware of the common name of this, but it's an easy one if you do find it. If you just pick it up, one of the fruit bodies, and you touch it, it should go that red colour. You can see this bit on the gills here on the main stem. So it's smooth, the cap. The stem is smooth and dry, and the gills are adnate, so they're broadly attached. Okay, so a quick word then. Microscopic identifying features. Purposes this is to not bombard you with information and spook you, just to make you aware of what we might look at in microscopes. Okay, so when we use microscopes to ID fungi, some of the species it's really important, some less so, but we typically look at things like spores under the microscope, their shape, what the size they are, the ornamentation, if they have spikes, are they smooth, have they got like, I'd explain it as like fan blades on them. In WaxcApp, there's something called the gill trauma. It's essentially if we remember what we talked about earlier, where the fungi basically feed through hyphae, or the mycelium. The mycelium is what it forms a fruiting body as it binds together and it forms all the structures. And in the gills, okay, of waxcaps, they have different ornamentations in the middle of the gill. And if you pick up some guides, then they have all different kinds. And after a bit of practice, it's actually quite easy to do. I won't go into these two next ones, Stipitipellis, in the interest of confusing people. But we also look at, like we talked earlier, basidia, where the spores come from. We look at kind of the length and the size and the shape of those as well to help us ID them. But yeah, if you do want to get, if you do get into IDing fungi, there are alternatives available. There's really cheap options available that do the job perfectly. So it's a bit of fun. But yeah, they're not as scary as they seem. They can be used by all. Okay, they're not a specialist piece of equipment. Like we've talked about, for some wax caps and some, especially for some other species of fungi, they are essential piece of kit. But they are cost-effective solutions, and there are people who will help you on the fungi groups. There's a mixture on the fungi groups of people who don't use microscopes and do. So if you don't have a microscope, don't feel like you can't get involved in fungi ID. Okay, these are my references. Hope you've enjoyed the talk. I haven't shocked your brains too much. If you've got any questions at the end, I'll be pleased to hear them.
Great, thank you so much, Hywel. That was so interesting. We managed to squeeze so many information in a really short time. Thank you so much for that. It was really quite short but in-depth introduction to grassland fungi. And if anyone wants to really get into fungi identification and maybe even become a recorder or become just as good as Hywel, we would really encourage you to join your local fungus groups. They'll give you all the support that you need, as Hywel already mentioned. And Phoebe and Tamsin have already popped some information about them into the chat, but they can do that again. So now it will be over to Bruce. He'll share a few videos with us first and then say a few words about his experience.
Thanks, Lucia. Let me just load up here. I'm going to show you my desktop. Look, doesn't this look nice? These are Hygrocyber punicea, which is crimson wax caps. They're on the mountains in Carmarthenshire. I love this picture, and it's a really lovely desktop. But so today I just want to just give you. Obviously, we'd love to go outside and have a look for all these wax caps, but we can't do that. So I've gone out with my little phone last week and just did 3 little short 1-minute films, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what I do. I work at the National Botanic Garden of Wales, which is, within that we have something called Windlass National Nature Reserve, and on that we have a meadow of international importance for waxcap fungi. So my job is the head of interpretation of the Botanic Garden, and part of my job is to know what we've got and to try and communicate that to people who come and visit our garden. Now, I used to be a professional field botanist in the 1980s, and I've always loved wildflowers. I've always walked across the sort of habitats where you get waxcaps, but until I came to the Botanic Garden, I never noticed them. I must have walked past them. I probably trodden them, squashed them, all sorts. But I remember years ago thinking I'd like to get into fungi, but I got a book. It was so complicated, I put it down and never really bothered again. But luckily, when I came to the Botanic Garden, which is in 2003, I wanted to, someone told me about this international meadow of international importance for waxcaps. I wanted to know about them. So I started going on walks with other fungi groups around here. I brought experts to come and talk to me about it, and I just started going out and having a look. And the more I sort of looked, the more I started to notice. And because of my previous field, my previous knowledge, I helped to run Wildlife National Nature Reserve. So I have a duty to try and think about how to conserve these wonderful, brightly coloured, multicoloured grassland fungi. And one thing that's really important about the National Botanic Garden of Wales when it was set up, it only opened in the year 2000, but it's organically run. We have a working farm which is on Wildlife National Nature Reserve, and it's organic. So we haven't been putting in any artificial chemicals for over 20 years now, and that's really important for these fungi. And so to start off, I'm just going to play you a 1-minute film just to tell you a little bit about fertiliser application. I'm on Wildlife National Nature Reserve. I'm actually stood in our waxcap meadow, and from here you can see a farmhouse just down there. It's called Wildlife Farm, and we have a fascinating hand-drawn map from the farmer at the time, who showed he marked out where he put his fertiliser at the time, his nitrogen-rich and phosphate-rich fertiliser. He put it on the fields there, the flat fields there, a flatter field down the bottom, this hill here, and then the adjoining area that runs up the hill there. He did not put any on here. And 50 years later, this meadow, we've found over 25 different waxcap species and a whole lot of other associated grassland fungi. But down there, we've hardly found anything. But interestingly, we've now been an organic farm for 20 years, but we're starting to see waxcaps appearing now on these areas in that field, little bits spots here and there. More like the pioneering waxcaps, the ones that don't need 60, 70, 80 years to establish. What's really exciting for me is every year we go and have a look around the Wildlife National Nature Reserve, and we keep finding more and more waxcaps in places we've never found before. Some years you don't hardly find anything because it hasn't rained for ages. Some years it's rained too much, so we moan about the weather, whatever we see. But sometimes you get a really cracking year, and this year's a bit mediocre. If you go out, I've seen some things, but not other things this year. But fertiliser is really, really important. But the other thing that's really important is sheep. Now, I'm just going to show you this picture here. This is a picture of a Balwin sheep. You can see that there. This is Lord Rees. He's the ram of the herd, but they're a local breed to this area of Carmarthenshire, and we use them to graze the meadows for waxcap fungi. And I'm going to show you another film now, just to show you how we do that. Here on Wildlife National Nature Reserve, you can see we've got a lovely, if sodden, ballerina waxcap, and you can see up there the critters which are responsible for maintaining them. These are Balwin sheep. We have a flock of 38 ewes and a ram called Lord Rees, the character he is, and we use them specifically to manage our waxcap meadows. Now, what makes them quite distinctive, apart from being rather cute, with little white faces and brown bodies and very skittish sort of nature, is that they're very light-footed. We used to have clean sheep here, and they were really heavy beasts. And we think their heavy feet helped to sort of like compress the ground, which made it harder and harder for the waxcaps to come out. But we're hoping these light-footed sheep will help us with our waxcap conservation in the future. We only bought the flock last year, and you see over there, there's Rebecca Thomas, who's our shepherdess, who also works in our education department, and she's in charge. And they're also a real draw for our visitors, because, you know, they're a breed from the Towie Valley, and they're quite distinctive. And because they always run away when anyone comes near, it's always a bit of a thrill every time you see them as well.
It's quite hard sometimes to get the grazing level exactly right. You can see from my desktop here, the grass is quite low and it's easy to see the waxcaps. Sometimes the sheep they just won't eat what you want them to eat. And that's always a bit of an issue. And a few years ago, the grass was really long and the sheep just weren't eating where we wanted them to do. So I carried out an experiment, and and I'm going to show you a little film about that. I'm going to confess to you now, it was a terrible, terrible mistake. And this is part of, when you're managing somewhere, you've got to accept that you're going to make mistakes sometimes. So I'm going to fess up to you and just tell you about this now.
I'm on Capiau waxcap, which is our main waxcap meadow here at the National Botanic Garden of Wales. It's on our National Nature Reserve. And right in front of us, around this post, this tends to be where we get most of our really interesting waxcaps and associated grassland fungi. But sometimes they're quite hard to see, particularly if you haven't grazed. And like today, actually, the grass is a little bit long and we're going to have to be grazing that soon. One year, about 10 years ago, we had a UK Fungus Day event coming up, and I wanted it to look great. I was going to bring a guided walk here, so I wanted everyone to see all the waxcaps without having to search the way through tall grass. So to get around that, me and the farmer put an electric fence around this, and we brought in our sheep, and we intensively grazed for 2 weeks, so well that there was hardly a blade of grass left after 2 weeks. And I thought, this is going to be absolutely great. We're going to see really loads of waxcaps come the UK Fungus Day. Fast forward 2-3 weeks until UK Fungus Day. Brought a whole group of people here, not a single waxcap where we've been grazing. And the reason for that was trampling. The trampling by livestock or human beings can really be bad for mushrooms coming out of the ground. They compact the soil, and they make it so hard that the fruiting body just cannot force their way through. I learned a really good lesson that day, and I was still a little bit embarrassed about it.
So you win some, you lose some. A lucky thing that we're doing now, though, is we are across Wildlife National Nature Reserve. We're farming 5 of the fields as hay meadows. So across the UK, we've lost something like 97% of all our species-rich meadows, but we are kind of changing that a little bit on the Nature Reserve. So we are doing an annual hay cut, and we take away the hay at the end of the year, and gradually over the years we don't add anything to it, and the nutrient levels are going down and down. And one of the lovely byproducts, apart from getting fields just full of orchids, we have thousands of orchids now every summer, of many different species, and this is all within 20 years, so we're very excited about it, and we're all selling seed and getting very excited. But I went on to one of our hay meadows on last Tuesday, and was absolutely delighted to see, you can see this on here, you see the hay bale there, but it is erupted with these ballerina waxcaps. There were dozens of them everywhere in places I've never seen before. So effectively what we're doing with our haymaking is we're acting like grazing sheep. We're just taking away, as if we were nibbling all the grass, taking it all away, and having grass very, very short, and allowing the waxcaps to be able to come up and to shed their spores.
So every year on our hay meadows, I now go round really excitedly to see what else might be coming out. And some years you see them in way over there, some years down there. This year they're all up here. And I don't really understand what's going on underneath, but I do know that the ballerinas supposedly take decades to establish themselves on land. So it could well be that on this area here, there wasn't any fertilizer applied for possibly decades. There's one last story I'd like to tell you about. It's a rather lovely little story, I think. When there was foot and mouth hit Wales in the early 2000s, a lot of the field ecologists at the time couldn't go onto field, so they actually did a lot of survey work in graveyards. So we had people in Carmarthenshire, a fellow called Nigel Stringer, going out and looking for waxcap fungi, and he found him in quite a few places. And 10 years later, I then revisited some of those graveyards, and it includes this one here, which is in a place called Llansadwrn, which is in Carmarthenshire. And I went to this graveyard, and I only found waxcaps in front of this little gravestone here. And if you read the inscription, it says that there's a lady there called Jane Ingram died in 1940. And there literally were just waxcaps there, nowhere else. And I did a bit of rooting around, and I found out that the graveyard itself is regularly mown, but they don't take away the cuttings. So all the cuttings stay on the grass. They keep the soil underneath relatively fertile, but around the gravestone, somebody, I think it might have been the husband, used to come along and used to sweep the grass away. So over decades, it allowed the waxcaps to gradually sort of establish themselves and to fruit. And it's absolutely beautiful. So thank you very much. That's my thing.
Thank you, Bruce, for that. Thank you very much. Might want to, if you can, just stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
I think that might. Thank you so much for the kind of great perspective on practical conservation management on the ground, because there is just so little still known about waxcaps. So having all of these years where you can work out what works best for them is just so valuable, really, to have even for other landowners. So it's a really great experience. Now moving on to our last speaker, Joe, who's going to tell you all about our new app.
Okay, everyone, 1 second, I'll just get set up. Okay, hello everyone. To start with, I'd like to echo what has been said by the others. Just how great it is to see so many people taking time out of their Friday evening to get involved in this webinar. As you will have seen in the other presentations, the variety of shapes and colours of our wax caps and grassland fungi really are spectacular and really deserving of more attention. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Joe Bullard. I'm the GIS and data assistant for Plant Life. In short, I analyse and map datasets, providing support to other colleagues who want to add a spatial element to their project work. I'll be presenting an overview of the WaxcApp survey form. So I'll be covering the following. Firstly, I'll present a brief background to WaxcApp, what it is, and perhaps just as importantly, what it isn't. I'll then do a live run through using the app itself within Survey 123. This will give you all a chance to see it in action and perhaps highlight any questions you may have relating to it. I'll then give you all a quick preview of the data we have collected so far, bearing in mind this has only been available for a few weeks. So to start with, what is WaxcApp? Well, WaxcApp is a citizen science survey form. It is designed to both engage with the public and provide useful habitat and site information that is a benefit to identifying potential sites of importance to waxcaps and other grassland fungi. It asks for users to collect information relating to how their site is managed and also identify the shapes and colours of grassland fungi they can find. The different colours and shapes are assigned a score which, when summed, categorises the site level of importance. This scoring system is taken from the work by Gareth Griffith et al. In British Nature 2004. At this point, it's worth highlighting that this is not a species level identification or recording app or tool. For those who are interested, the survey form itself was put together using Esri Survey 123. Survey 123 is a software that utilises the XLS form standard to create data capture forms. It allows for the creation of intuitive smart survey forms that work natively across both Apple and Android devices. As it's within the Esri suite of software, this means it can instantly sync with Esri ArcGIS online services, meaning the data you capture within WaxcApp can contribute to a live web map. Now we've got that out of the way, I'll demonstrate a quick run through of the app. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, so upon opening WaxcApp, you'll be greeted with this page, which provides a general introduction. It also features links to the app landing page, which has plenty of useful information and tips, and a Facebook group for WaxcApp surveyors where you can share your findings and photos. I really recommend checking both these resources out, as it's a great way to get more info and connect with fellow WaxcApp and grassland fungi enthusiasts. Lastly, for all of you Welsh speakers out there, note that you can use the app. You can undertake the whole app of a survey within Welsh, should you wish to. You just need to collect these 3 bars at the top of the screen. And you'll see, it instantly translates to Welsh. This applies to the whole of the app. For now, I'll leave it in English. So page 2, I won't hang around too long on this screen. It gives us some general information about you, your name, indication of your experience level, and email address should you wish to receive more info, and a checkbox to confirm your age. Now, moving on, this is where we really get down to details of your site. So location, current conditions, and management, all of which will, all of which may influence the type of fungi you find. This sort of information is what separates this from a standard species recording app. So starting with the obvious, we ask for site name, site location. You see, you can either use your device location or drop a pin. Okay. Sorry, won't bear me. Okay, the next step is to select the type of site you're surveying. I'd like to take this chance to kind of point out, you really can do this anywhere. So, whether it's got your garden lawn, cemetery, roadside verge, even a park. So there's a few more questions relating to, moss cover. We've tried to keep this as accessible as possible and avoid using, more complex ecological language you'd find in some other survey forms. There's also the option to submit a photo of your site and SWORD if you wish. This gives us a degree of qualitative information that's harder to capture with more traditional questions. Okay, so finally we're on to the main event, the WaxcApp survey. So as I said previously, this uses the scoring system originally published by Gareth Griffith. So rather than focusing on identifying down to species level, something that can be challenging and intimidating for newcomers, instead we're asking you to record the broad colours and shapes of the wax caps you find on your site. Each broad type is assigned a different value, which, when summed together, gives you a site level score. So as you can see here, I've selected a few, for example, red wax caps. What else have we got on this imaginary site of ours? So white, yellow coral, earth tongue. So that gives us a site score of 8. And that means it's showing some promise, as you can see from this text here. At this stage, I'd like to emphasize that even if you don't find anything of interest on your first survey, it really is worth taking another look, whether that's later this season or even next year, as the presence of fruiting bodies can vary significantly from year to year. So a site that doesn't appear particularly interesting early in the season may have a lot more on offer next time you visit. In acknowledgement of that, we have included the option to revisit the site and edit your previous survey with any new findings you may come across. So final page with a thank you from us. There's links to further information, again, for information on wax caps, and some general sort of like instructions on how to edit your app should you wish to. Lastly, we always appreciate if you can give us a tiny bit of feedback, what we did right, what we did wrong, any changes you'd like to make as well. Okay. So hopefully at this point, you're wondering how you can get involved yourself. WaxcApp can be accessed using your mobile browser or within the Survey 123 app. We recommend using the app as it provides you with a better user experience. It could be downloaded for use offline. Note, if you want to use it within the app, you'll need to first download the app from Google Play or the App Store. Links to both are shown on the app landing page. From there, you can either enter the link or scan the QR code to access WaxcApp. You'll then be presented with the option to open WaxcApp either in browser or in the Survey 123 app, and that's it, you're good to go. If you have any further queries, I recommend checking out the landing page. And again, I do encourage you to use that resource, or even just ask or check out the Facebook group. Links to which are available. Okay, one last thing I'd like to show you. Just a quick preview of the data we've got so far. So as you can see, so bearing in mind we're in the early stages of the app, it's only been out a few weeks, each of these points indicates a survey submitted so far. So with the green points are those of the highest scoring, orange middle and red lower. As you can see, you've got good coverage from the north of Scotland right down to the western tip of Cornwall, although there are a few gaps which I'm hoping some of you watching will be able to fill in. So thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Joe. We will have some questions at the end now. Just wanted to say thank you, and it really is so simple to use, our app, so I would encourage everyone to go and use it. And now is really such a great time to go out. October is really the peak season for wax caps, so now they're popping up everywhere. And also, of course, the more we know about them, the better we can protect them in the future. So it would be really great if you can have a go at the app and let us know what you think. Joe, can you please stop sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Thank you. We've been getting some really great questions throughout the sessions, and Tamsin and Phoebe have been really busy replying. There started to be some kind of themes emerging, so I'm just going to pick out a few of these and direct them to our speakers so they can just give us questions. So if Hywel, Joe, and Bruce can unmute yourself for this section, that would be really great. So let's start with question from was it Lisa? I think at the very beginning. Yes, Lisa. How can I become a recorder of fungi? So I think Hywel, this is a really great one for you.
Great. Yeah, good question, Lisa. So you don't need a special background or anything. Anyone can be a recorder of fungi or a field mycologist. Your best option is to join the local recording groups, Lisa, and just start on your own and have a go at it. That's the best advice I can give you. There's some great guides you can get. Jeffrey Kibbe does some great guides, but also David Bortman, he's a Danish mycologist. He's written a really great book on waxcap fungi. I'll ask the guys at Plant Life to perhaps send a list of stuff through so you can have a look. But yeah, the best advice is just get stuck in, really. The local recording groups, Pembrokeshire Fungus Group, Glamorgan and Carmarthenshire as well. Honestly, if you put some pictures up there, don't feel like you're not doing it properly or worried about making a mistake. Just have a go, basically.
Great, thank you. While we are on the fungi identification, I might ask another one for Hywel. What is the minimum power microscope which is suitable for looking at spores?
The spores. So that's a good question. I've got a microscope with 100 times magnification on the main lens, so there'll be 1,000 times, just to get an idea of, a lot of spores probably between like 5 and 10 micrometers, so anything that can really record them, And
could you recommend like a cheapish microscope that is suitable for?
So I've got stuff from Brunel, which probably isn't as cheap, but a cracking set of microscopes. But Apex, I think, do a nice one that's cheap, around £100 mark. The Botanical Gardens, when COVID restrictions are eased again and then it's back to normal, they have a selection of microscopes there that they allow people to use. So perhaps look at getting people involved with that if they can't afford a microscope, and I can show people some of the basic skills you need. But yeah, there's always an option there for you.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple of questions about management as well. So I think, Bruce, you might be best to answer a couple of these. One from Abby. I found waxcaps on the Frith where there have been sheep grazing for a long time. Obviously, they're producing fertilizer in the form of poo. So will those sites be limited in terms of the kinds of waxcaps I will find? And are some species more sensitive than others?
There's no problem as far as I know, because sheep grazed areas is where you find the waxcaps. So natural fertilizer is absolutely fine. It's the unnatural fertilizer that's a problem. What was your second question, Lucia? Sorry.
It's one of them was quite similar, but slightly different. So how do you work out the balance between grazing the sward low and increasing nutrients too much with sheep poo?
Oh, do you know what? I don't think there's a real science to that. I mean, it's just you get a feel, and every place is slightly different. But if you think of a graveyard where you get really good fungi, that's usually where everyone takes away all the cuttings. So that just says to me they like lower fertility. And again, the best places where you often see waxcaps is slightly upland meadows as well, where you get an awful lot of sheep grazing. And sometimes they can graze it really, really low, and you still get amazing amount of waxcaps. But there's some error mystery that I don't really know the answer to.
How about mob grazing with sheep, where you put on a large number but only for a few days?
Well, my example on my video, I know the videos might look a bit shaky in places, and apologies if that's the case, but my experience is mob grazing is a terrible idea. Particularly when I did my mob grazing by putting electric fence around, we had clean sheep, and clean sheep are really big and heavy. So they were just pounding the land, and they were compacting and compacting and compacting the soil. Just a really bad idea. I'm afraid what you really need is just to leave your sheep out there for quite a long time in the build up to autumn. We put our sheep out there just during the year, and we just let them just nibble away as the year goes on, and just generally keep the grass a little bit low. You don't want too many sheep though, because also on our waxcap meadows or on our waxcap pastures, we also have some really nice wildflowers coming up. So we don't want to like knock those down too, but we kind of try and increase the grazing a little bit as autumn comes on, just to get a little bit lower so we can see our waxcaps.
Thank you. Maybe another one on the management to kind of finish off the topic. Have you got any guidance, please, on managing grazing on botanically rich sites that are also rich in fungi? Usually aftermath grazing with some trampling would be recommended for hay meadows, and for pasture sites, grazing is often increased after the flowering seeding period is over. Could this inadvertently be damaging fungi in grasslands?
I don't think it's not damaging. It's all slightly relative, because a lot of fungi are underneath the ground. So on our hay meadows, we cut late, and we deliberately cut late because we want to collect wildflower seed, and we sometimes do green hay, so we want to be able to export orchid seed to another patch. So we kind of cut it, and so it means we cut it in like late August, early September. So on those patches, we've got very short grass. And it's actually fine to put light grazing onto those sort of habitats. It's not really going to do too much damage to the waxcaps. I think if you were to put in a big herds of cattle, that's not going to be good. They're going to not only crush the actual fruiting bodies that might be there, or they might compact the ground. So it's just a matter of just thinking about how compact is the soil going to be with the grazing. So I think you can have botanically rich areas, and you can have really good waxcap areas as well. You just got to just think about the balance and not go over the top with anything.
Thank you, Bruce. Ruth is asking, does the WaxcApp accept what 3-word locations?
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
That's me. No, it doesn't. It uses your device's location built into it. So there shouldn't be any need for you to use what 3 words. Alternatively, you can manually select using the like dropping a pin on the map. So no, to answer your question, no, it doesn't, but you shouldn't need to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is there a general guideline as to how many different species of waxcaps and associated fungi make a site particularly valuable? Don't know who wants to take this one.
If I could just say a little bit from my own point of view, I know there are an increasing amount of SSI, sites of special scientific interest, for fungi being designated in Wales. I think that only started happening probably in the 2000s, because again, before that, hardly anyone really thought about waxcaps. And there was a mycologist called Maurice Rotherow in the 1990s who did a lot of pioneering work in Wales for this. So there is, Hywel mentioned it on his presentation, there's kind of a slightly clunky acronym called CHEG-D, which is something called, which kind of like scores up all the different types of waxcap and earth tongs and all sorts of different associated fungi. And you can actually start to get a scoring sheet for that. But I don't think there's a definitive, oh, you've hit the goal now, you must be an SSI. I think it's a little bit more subjective than that. But I think you probably, if you've got about 20 waxcaps in your site, you've got a pretty good site. It's a good way of, that's my sort of rule of thumb, 20 is really.
Yeah, and of course, the WaxcApp app, the new app, is also kind of loosely based on the scoring. So it's not going to give you the definitive answer, as you were saying, but it will point out some hopefully good sites.
Yeah. It's also worth pointing out that waxcaps, there's more waxcaps in the UK than there are in Europe. And in the UK, there's more probably waxcaps in Wales than there are in the rest of the UK. So it just gives you, it's a little bit like bluebells, you know, they might seem quite common in some ways, but the UK is like the centre for your bluebells in the world. And waxcaps, I think we have an awful lot of waxcaps here, so it's us, we have a real duty to look after them, I think.
This one is really interesting from Adam. Maybe Hywel and Bruce will be able to both answer from slightly different views. With the UK leaving the EU shortly, is there any thought to how the loss of the common agricultural policy will impact on fungi across Wales?
So with agriculture, I think that we seem to think that these intensive agricultural practices or subsidies which are favouring intensive agricultural practices are probably going to have a negative impact on a lot of even grassland plants and fungi. Yeah, improved pasture where you're kind of getting dominant grass growth. Start my video. Is probably likely to choke the wax caps out over the years. So yeah, it's not ideal really. We do need to start seeing different agricultural practices brought in and subsidised for farmers to encourage them to adopt more green approaches to farming. Unfortunately, this is not always good in terms of productivity for the farmer. So this is where the problem lies really. It really boils down to money at the end of the day. There just needs to be the incentives there for people to do it.
Can I just add that I don't really know the answer to this, about the leaving your answer, but I think the growth in demand for organic products. So a lot of people like to buy organic milk and organic lamb, and I think the organic side, I think, is the growth in the demand for organic products. Hopefully, will also mean that we're putting less artificial stuff on our land. So again, at Wynelast National Nature Reserve, everything's organic there. So we're not adding any artificial fertiliser, and we are seeing more and more wax caps on our land. So hopefully that will happen in other places where people are managing the land organically.
Thank you very much for an answer to a complex question. This is quite a nice one. Do you think you have a lot of wax caps in Wales because you have a lot of sheep?
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Definitely a possibility. Kind of permanent pasture. In the Brecon Beacons, where there's quite a lot of sheep there, you seem to get quite good wax cap numbers. We're still trying to largely figure out what wax cap do and the best management practices for them. So, yeah, we seem to think that cutting the grass short probably allows the wax caps to spread a bit easier, but also the nutrient dynamics we think are very important for their survival as well. So grazing animals play a big part in ecology sometimes. So yeah, could well be. So
possibly not directly connected to sheep, but with the habitat, because often they could be old pastures.
Perhaps not directly to do with the sheep, but to do with the fact that the sheep are cutting the swamp quite low to the ground, and just allowing them to spread basically. But yeah, it's a bit of a mystery at the moment. It's really good because they're shrouded in a bit of mystery in terms of their biology and ecology, the wax caps. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people discover about them in the coming years.
It's also worth bearing in mind as well that we're not such an arable country in Wales, so we're not ploughing the land. So the worst thing you could possibly do for a wax cap is to plough your land, is to just break up the soil, destroy all the mycelium, and that's it then for many years. So we do, the fact that we actually graze more means that I think we do have more wax caps.
So linked very tightly with what you just said, Bruce, was another question that was asking about preparation of soil before you want to create a meadow. So often what we recommend is scarify the ground. Could you please tell us whether scarification is okay, and is there a difference between, what's the difference between ploughing and scarification? Is scarification really bad as well?
Do you know, that's a really interesting point, because when we use our green hay, we're creating new hay meadows at the Botanic Garden, and we've scarified some areas because that helps the seed from the green hay to sort of settle into the ground. But when we scarify, we're not scarifying too deeply, but it is a good point. I haven't really thought about it. I wonder, but we're often introducing, for instance, our green hay into an area where we don't actually have wax caps in the first place. Usually meadows just dominated by grass where we haven't had wax caps. And funny enough, we've actually found, this year we have some conservation volunteers at the Botanic Garden. They found some wax caps in a meadow which we did put green hay in 2016, where we would have scarified the land, and they have found some pioneering wax caps this year. So maybe, Hal will probably know better, he's more of a scientist than I am, maybe the scarification is only on the very, very top, because you're only just scraping the top. That's what you want to do when you get a seed. You don't need to like really deeply scrape it, otherwise that wouldn't work. So slight scarification might be okay, but I don't really know. What do you reckon, Hal?
I'm not sure. I don't want to give a definitive answer. Some fungi, not wax caps, react to disturbed soils and things like that. It can trigger them to fruit. For the wax caps, I'm not sure. It'd be an interesting thing to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But as we often find them in old meadows or newer meadows, it might suggest that maybe scarification is not as bad as ploughing, as you, Bruce, said. We've got a question about the app. Abby is asking, do the records we put in WaxcApp get put into the local record center automatically, or do we have to put them in Covenant equivalent app separately?
Okay, so it's not. I'd like to point out it's not a species level identification app. So you know, it's taking a broad brush approach, looking at the habitats and kind of broader WaxcApp and Grassland Fungi groups. So you won't actually be recording species, but if you can record species, that's great. And I'm sure the local record centers would love that information. But you can't do that through the app, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in that sense, you want to do species separately for the other apps. We are only asking for the colors, but we will be working with the fungus groups and we'll be referring them to the high scoring sites that we get from the app. Another question about the app. Joe, could you please just run through what's the best way to download it, because a couple of people were saying they have difficulties of finding the app on the actual Play Store.
Okay, yeah, so you first need to download the Esri ArcGIS Survey 123 app. Once you have that app downloaded on your phone or mobile device, you can then select the link that's on the landing page. This will then give you the option to either open the WaxcApp within your web browser or within the Survey 123 app. So, like I said in my presentation, I recommend using the app rather than the browser. There are full details on how to do this on the landing page as well, which I'll post a link to in the chat for everyone who's interested.
Thank you. A couple of kind of specific identification questions on fungi. Do you need to cut the fungi in half to see the gill attachment?
It depends on the gill attachment, really. If you can avoid pulling it out or picking it up, then great. If you've got something like decurrent gills, so the gills are going down the stem, you can probably just look. I know some people who've got like little pocket mirrors, they look underneath it and have a look. But it's, yeah, sometimes you'll need to cut them in half to look at the gills. So that's okay, you know, as long as it's for ID purposes or something like that. Just remember not to pick every last fungi on the site, and remember that other organisms rely on those fruiting bodies or fungi probably. So yeah, it's just being a bit responsible. Yeah, more or less. If it's say adnex to adnate gill structures, you know, you need to cut them in half like I did in the pictures to have a look what the gills are.
Has there been attempts to cultivate wax caps? If so, what substrates have shown the most primal?
They've tried, but they're not easily cultivatable. People don't really know why. People have tried, but with little success, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, because aspects of the biology are relatively unknown, it's difficult to know how to cultivate them best, really.
I've had a go. I mean, I think that most people I know who are interested in wax caps have all had a little go of collecting fruiting bodies and then sort of put them over a piece of grassland where you quite like to have them, maybe on a lawn, give them a good old shake and just hope that something might magically happen over the next few years. Never happened for me yet. So it's an
enormous amount we don't know really about fungi in general. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Because of new technologies that come through now, we're starting to learn a lot more about fungi, but because of their enormous diversity, there's an awful lot to learn, even with the new technology we're getting in the 21st century. So yeah, it's exciting, but it's a big task. So yeah.
I'm guessing we probably don't know the answer to the question that is asking, do wax caps favor a particular soil type, acid or alkaline?
I'm not sure on that one. I've seen that one. Yeah, I don't know wouldn't be able to answer that one, but it's an interesting point, isn't it?
You do get some that are specialised in limestone areas and some are specialised in acid, and you get sort of all those in the middle. But what the thing they don't do in Britain, they don't tend, from what I've seen, they don't tend to like it when it's really, really wet. So in marshland, I know on your presentation, how you said about the in bogs and things. Well, that's probably in other parts of the world, isn't it?
It's probably species specific. So we think as human beings we'll group all these as wax caps, but the truth is probably that each individual species will have its own slightly different requirements. So we can kind of generalize a little bit, but it's important to note that there's probably exceptions to the rule with everything. That's an important thing to kind of think about with all these things. We've put them into categories and boxes, and we think of them this way, but they don't always behave like that. And fungi are very plastic organisms, so they can adapt to a new environment quite quickly. We know that because, you know, we find them in woodlands and we find them in grasslands as well, and the range of habitats we find fungi in. So whilst we find a lot of particular fungi in grasslands, for instance, it's not impossible for them to turn up in habitats which are completely different. You know, they kind of see a resource and then they acquire it. That's usually how they work. So yeah, don't ever be too blinkered that you're going to think that it can't be this because it only occurs there. You know, there will be some movement around the rules there.
And we have had a couple of questions about foraging, actually. Foragers keep saying it's okay to pick fungi because the mycelium is underground and this is just like picking apples. But I know some fungi are protected. So how does picking fungi affect their spread and survival?
So this comes up a lot, okay, fungi and eating. What the problem is that it's a really hard thing to measure impact in terms of a scientific study. It's very resource intensive. It's quite hard to design. Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer, to be honest. We want to try and get people's idea of fungi to shift a little bit. A lot of people will think, as soon as you think of mushrooms, you think of eating them. But we're trying to get people to understand that there's far more amazing than just how much they can eat. And they do play important roles in the environment. And they do provide food for other wildlife and other creatures, and other organisms rely on them. So yeah, that's the message we're trying to get across, basically.
There's quite a few people on when I give walks, that said, "Oh, I've tried that one. I've tried that one." So they've taken a few wax caps, and tried them out at home. And I think generally what most people say, they just go to a bit of a mush. And they say, "Oh, it's lovely with garlic," but basically you're just tasting a garlic mush then, So I don't think wax caps particularly have any great culinary side to them, really. I've got a feeling, I might be wrong here, but I think the parrot wax caps actually have something in them which is a little bit like a psilocybin or something. Not that I've tried it, but I think you can.
Not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, be careful of that one.
One question about the app. Is the autumn the time you expect the app to be mostly used?
Yeah, we expect so. We did look at, you can sort of like set like active times for the app, but we figured we'd just leave it on and see how it happens with regard, we're just trying to get as many people submitting now as we can. Obviously, this being the peak time for fungi, it's hoped this will be the sort of, when the bulk of the surveys come in.
Thank you. Maybe one last question. This is quite a nice one. I would be quite curious to actually know the answer for this one as well. Do we know how we could encourage wax caps in our lawns or possibly on our rooftops for those kind of roof gardens?
I think probably Bruce is the best answer to that. I'd probably say remove the clippings to start with. I've got a friend whose mum has, she's been cutting, she's got a slope by the house of the field, and she's been taking the clippings off and cutting the saw quite low and dumping the clippings on the compost for about 30 years. And it kind of created a wax cap haven accidentally. Much the same situation where Bruce is talking about people removing cuttings around gravestones. So something's happening when we're taking the cuttings away. That's what we're observing. A lot of us are observing what's happening. Yeah, I think you've got green roofs. I've heard reports people getting them on green rooms. I haven't seen any yet. To be honest, I don't come across many green roofs, but yeah, fungi pop up in the strangest places sometimes. So
yeah, and generally as well, it's obviously very ill-advised that I would never recommend digging up a waxcap turf and moving it somewhere else. Although, funny enough, at the Botanic Garden we had a new path was going through a little bit where we had a waxcap. So just out of curiosity, last year I dug up a bit of turf and put it into another bit of meadow. And so far I've not seen anything this year. It's not really worked. And it's generally frowned upon, that sort of practice, to actually give that a go. And I think they're so delicate and they're so complicated. I don't think it is a matter of just digging up turf and moving it onto your roof or something like that. I think you just have to do what Hywel says and just hope for the best and just be patient. And maybe
the law you've got to think about when doing things like that, especially on triple SIs and things. It's best to leave preserved. It's best to get the advice of whoever's responsible for the site and then go with that more or less. Yeah, you don't want to be getting in trouble.
Yeah, but just keep your fertile. Don't be putting all that fertilizer stuff on your lawn.
Yeah,
just leave it alone. And you never know, you might have a real treat one year.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people they've just been taking clippings off the lawn basically and not putting any fertilizer on it, inorganic or organic, leaving it alone, taking the clippings and dumping the clippings. Yeah, and then people start getting things slowly creeping in. Hygroscopy conica seems to be, and Hygroscopy virginea, which is snowy waxcap, seems to be some of the earlier colonizers on those when that happens. So yeah, it's good, fun project. If you have a space of lawn you're willing to dedicate to waxcap fungi improvement, but also you'll get lots of other grassland fungi as well, probably popping up as well. So.
We see this at the Botanic Garden. If anyone knows the National Botanic Garden of Wales, we have a little bit of lawn in front of what we call a stable block. And that was only laid down in the year 2000. And I've found both those species that Hywel said, the conica and the snowy waxcap as well. I've seen them both on that lawn. And it's really exciting because I think it's obviously developing. So maybe in like 20 or 30 years' time, we'll start to see the red waxcaps, ones that take decades to establish. Just going to be patient.
Yeah, be patient. Great, thank you so much for your answers. We are going to have to wrap up now. We are at past. So I'd really just like to thank you everyone for joining us for the session, finding the time on Friday. Huge thank you to our speakers. I think those talks, presentations were really, really interesting. I hope you learned a lot. I wanted to let you know that the session has been recorded. So it will be in a few days put on a Plant Life YouTube channel, so you can rewatch it as many times as you like or share it with your friends. We will be also sending a follow-up email, so you'll have all of the really important information with the most useful links there, with the link for the YouTube as well. And again, also thank you our behind-the-scenes team for answering all the questions as we went. I really hope that you are inspired and mostly curious to go out and find some of these wax caps in your local sites, maybe the cemeteries. Yeah, so I would just like to thank you and say have a great weekend.
Thank you, Lucia, and thank you to Plant Life.
Yeah.